This happened back in the summer of 2010, when I was just entering my teenage years. My family took a trip to a really nice hotel in the city. I can't really remember why we decided to take the trip, but I remember a lot of family friends coming with and staying in adjacent rooms. I've never asked my parents, and it's not truly too important to the story. To preface, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, and always have been. I was a pretty skinny and fragile kid, so I got spooked pretty easily. I think that persists even now. This experience, however, was almost definitely not me freaking myself out like I normally did. Looking back, I'm incredibly lucky that I trusted my instincts. This hotel had a strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor, not the ground level, which I found strange. To access the lobby, you had to use the elevator. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. This information would have been nice before everything happened, as you'll soon find out. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Every floor was lined with a balcony, and you could look down into the lobby and cafe area from your floor. Essentially, if you were walking to your room, you could be seen by anyone that was on your floor if they just stepped out of their room and looked around. I always was afraid to fall over the balcony and sail down 8 stories to my death. But the railings were high enough to a point where I wasn't too concerned for my safety. The first day or two were nice. My friends and I hung out and played cards all day, or we watched whatever was on TV. At night, we'd explore the halls of the hotel and tell each other ghost stories. It was a really fun time, even though I didn't fully understand why we were even there. On the 3rd day, though, things got strange. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside of my door. Now, because of the hotel's design that I mentioned, sounds from the lobby would echo all the way up to the top of the building. So when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over the balcony to see what the commotion was all about. I saw a girl lying on the ground, eggs and milk splattered everywhere around her. People were rushing to assist her, and I heard a couple of people telling each other to call 911. It seemed as if the girl was unconscious. Maybe she had passed out or something. I scanned the lobby and saw that my family and a couple of my friends were down there getting breakfast, all staring at the event unfolding in front of them. I decided that I'd rush down to meet them to find out just what had happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my floor, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. Not a big deal. I descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. I took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th floor, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now at this point, I probably should have just turned back, but I continued down because I was tired and didn't want to climb back up all those stairs. There were some weird side hallways that went into pitch black areas with a bunch of piping and wiring, and though I was curious to explore, I passed them by. I quickly hit the bottom floor, a dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete floors. In front of me was a set of double doors. I hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way back to the lobby. So I opened them and entered. Behind the doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably about the size of a high school's gymnasium. The only light coming in was from the stairwell behind me, so I really wasn't able to see much. Rollaway stairs were stacked and covered in plastic wrap. Tables lined the wall, and in the distance, I thought I could see boxes stacked and lined against the wall as well. I was probably in the storage room for the hotel. I looked around and saw an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. I closed the door to the stairwell and began to walk in the dim light. The room was super muggy, dusty, and it seemed like nobody had been down here in a long time. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed it was a little bigger than the elevators in the lobby. I pressed the up button, but got zero response. There was a card swiper next to the button. Must have been for employees only, I thought. I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I gave it a tug, only to find it locked. This is when things really started to hit me, and I realized I was now stuck in the dark, dusty basement of this hotel. I didn't have a cell phone because my parents wouldn't let me get one until I graduated middle school, so I couldn't call anyone for help. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began to freak out, believing that nobody was going to come looking for me. I searched around the warehouse, looking for other ways out. Some areas of the place were better lit than others, so I looked around in areas I could see first before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but those happened to be locked as well. I began to cry, scared that nobody would ever find me in this basement. I swear, it felt like hours, although as I think back, it was probably no more than a handful of minutes before I heard the door creak open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, rather the second door that I had found. A slim, middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. Now, if this was 21-year-old me seeing this man, I would be very confused as to why this guy was wearing a lab coat in a hotel. But I was only 12 or 13 at the time, so I was immediately relieved at the sight of an adult, one who looked smart. I approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked surprised to see me, just as you'd expect. "What are you doing down here?" he yelled. "I got lost on my way to the lobby, and I've been locked in here. Do you have a key for the elevator?" I was shaking, eager to get out of there. He didn't answer my key question, and instead he said, "I know a way out of here. Follow me." He began to walk towards the doors with the stairwell, and I followed, relieved that someone had finally come to save me. We approached the doors, and I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. "Isn't it right here?" I asked. I'll never forget the look on his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though the lighting was dim, I could see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses. "No, this way," he said sternly. I continued to follow him, but I was now nervous myself. We had passed the door to the stairs and were now headed toward a darker side of the basement, one away from the elevators. He looked like he had no clue where he was leading me, as he kept checking around him, almost as if he was taking in his surroundings for the very first time. We turned a corner and began walking towards the boxes. Another dead end. I immediately froze, realizing that something was very, very wrong here. This guy had no idea where he was going, nor did he even appear to work at the hotel. I said, my voice shaking, "Okay, where are we going then?" He turned and said, "This way. Just follow me." I knew that there were no doors by those boxes. I had checked there first, after I found out that the stairwell door was locked. I want to thank whatever God is up there for gifting me with the idea that I had next. I started yelling, as loud as I could. I yelled so loud that I gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me. "What are you doing? Be quiet." I continued to yell though. I don't even remember how long I was yelling for, when finally the man snapped and began quickly walking towards me. I went in a full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping with every ounce of me that they'd somehow be magically open. He didn't run after me. He walked sternly behind me, muttering things like "stupid kid" and all sorts of other kind of compliments. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through. My savior, a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation, me and some random guy in a lab coat in a locked basement, and he immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was. I told him that I had no idea, that he had come in through the door on the other side of the room, and I pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement, and quietly, so that I wouldn't hear, he said, "And a man that came from outside. Get security." The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he was simply looking for a bathroom, although the janitor clearly wasn't buying it, and kept saying things like, "Wait till security gets here. Talk to them about it." I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in everything that was happening, confused out of my mind though. Eventually, an employee from the front desk arrived and took me back up the steps to the lobby, where I met with my family, who, unsurprisingly, had no idea that I was even missing. I told them the story, crying and shaking, and they hugged me tightly, thanking the employee over and over for their help, although I never did get to thank that janitor. Looking back now, I have absolutely no clue what that man was doing in the basement. I don't have any information as to what happened afterwards, or who he even was. I know for a fact that the incident with the girl in the lobby was unrelated. Something about low blood sugar. Not sure. I've thought about that day a lot, and the only explanation I can put together is that the door that I found in the basement led to the streets of the city, where that man must have wandered in from. I have no clue what his intentions were, why he was wearing a lab coat, or why he chose to pretend that he knew a way out. To be frank, this could have been just a huge misunderstanding of some sort, and I just chose a really bad time to get lost. But all I know for sure is, if I hadn't screamed my lungs out when I did, I might not have been telling the story the same way, or at all. I worked as a flight attendant for a few years, back when I decided to take an extended sabbatical from college. There were a handful of let's not meet situations that I encountered, but one in particular still makes my skin crawl more than any other. I was born and raised in Texas, but had moved to New York when I was 21. So when I found out at the beginning of a week-long trip that I'd have a couple of overnights in Austin, I was super excited to go to my home state, even if just for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, and we planned to hang out and go out to dinner the night that I arrived, once he got off of work. And the following day, we were going to meet up with our dad, who lived about an hour away. So I arrived to the hotel downtown. Both the crew and I check in, and then we each head off to our individual rooms. Short elevator ride, and I get to mine, where not even 5 minutes later, there's a loud, hard knock on the door. It was still early in the afternoon, and I hadn't called either my dad or my brother to let them know that I was in town yet, so they wouldn't know what room I was in. I assumed that maybe it was one of my crewmates, so I headed to the door. But before even making it down the short hallway, a loud male voice on the other side boomed. "The front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in. Unlock the door and open up, miss. I need in. Now." I froze in my tracks. I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet, let alone called anything down to the front desk. I'm a petite chick, and while I take no shit from anyone despite my size, I still err on the side of caution. Slowly inching toward the door to look out the peephole, all I could tell was that the man on the other side was at least 6 feet tall and easily double my weight. No way in hell was I going to unlock the door for him. I responded to the guy, telling him that he must have the wrong room. He continued pounding on the door while constantly turning the handle. His only response was no, that he needed in, and that he was getting in the room one way or another. I panicked, but thankfully had the sense to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed that they had neither sent anyone up to my room, nor had they received a call about the bathroom. The entire time, this guy was still determined to get in the room, pounding and yelling. Lucky for me, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor immediately. When the security officer stepped off the elevator a few seconds later, I can hear them approaching from down the hall. They asked the guy who he was, what he was doing, and told him that he needed to leave the hotel. He in turn gets hostile and aggressive towards them. The front desk clerk that I'm still on the phone with tells me that the police have been called and are on their way. But in the meantime, I'm trapped in my room, scared shitless. Long story made just a tiny bit shorter, the cops show up pretty quickly and manage to arrest the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing, or something to that extent. I later found out that the guy was also wanted in connection to a string of break-ins and violent assaults in Austin. Apparently, he had seen me the moment that I walked into the hotel lobby and chose to stalk me the moment that he got the opportunity. Allegedly, I was exactly his type of victim. I think that we like to envision hotels as some kind of controlled environment where people who are inside these walls have a reason to be here, and that if someone is knocking on your door, that it's likely with official hotel business. I'm glad that I had the sense to not blindly open that door and welcome whatever that man had planned. From the sounds of it all, I may have dodged something that could have likely been life-altering. I've been working for an independent hotel for just over 4 years now. We're the #1 rated hotel in our city, and proud of it. I mostly work in housekeeping, but have done some time at the front desk as well. I love my job, and I've always said that my bosses are great. Now, being a housekeeper, I've seen some things. I've seen a room where someone snuck in their dog, kitten, and chicken. Keep in mind that we don't allow pets. I once had a room that I was cleaning as a stayover that had tripods set up around the bed, professional camera equipment cases, an adult-sized pacifier, and XL-sized children's diapers. I even had a room once that we had to call the cops on for a raid because we found illicit substances inside. When the police arrived, they found a lot of drugs and guns in that room. But today is the first time that I've ever actually felt scared to be within a guest room. As I'm working on a room that's already been vacated, a man in the next room over catches me at my supply card. He's said to be staying for several days and tells me, "You can go ahead and clean my room now. I'm headed down for breakfast." Excellent. I love getting my stayovers done early on. It makes things easier for the people working laundry the sooner that we get the dirty laundry down to them. So I pop over into his room, opening it up and propping the door open with a stopper like we always do. The first thing that I notice is that he has around 20 prescription bottles lined up on one of the 2 beds, along with several insulin bottles and needles. I'm nosy, I'll admit it, and I wanted to see what he was on. Oddly, it was only 2 different types of medication for all 20 bottles. About 2/3 of them were a diabetes medication, and the rest were a cholesterol medication. That's a little weird that he has so many bottles of the same meds, but whatever. I go to make the bed and see that some of the bedding has been stained. I sigh to myself, knowing now that I'll have to change all the bedding instead of just being able to turn down the sheets and blanket. So I leave the room, closing it behind me to go get the linens that I need, and then head right back. I prop the door open again and head to set the clean linens on the desk chair when I see out of the corner of my eye 2 notes sitting on the TV armoire. Normally, this wouldn't mean anything to me, except for this time, I caught the word "kill" scrawled on it. I dropped the linens in order to take a closer look. What I read on the first note still makes my blood run cold. You don't have to forgive her. You just can't kill her. They're here to take money and alcohol away from you. Get over having to kill her, and you can safely leave. After reading this, my heart was pounding, and my eyes naturally floated over to the second note, which had just looked like a to-do list at first glance. But in the end, it made my stomach churn. Spray and wash. Apply for Medicare. Insubordination. The soul is healed by being with children. Bank card follow-up. Inheritance. Savings. Kauai. Population 10,500. Map, Montana. There will be a day of reckoning. Did you tell Mom what I said? How did Bev get my address? It was too much. I quickly snapped pictures of the notes on my phone so that I could show my boss why I wouldn't clean this room. I left the room quickly, closing it up behind me. When, just as the door closes, I turn and see the man just 10 feet away from me, returning to his room. My heart's in my throat at this point, but I manage to smile and tell him, "I need more supplies. I'll be back to your room in a bit." I take off straight for the elevator, having noticed our maintenance man waiting for the slow transport. In a hushed tone, I tell him what I found, and he sees that I'm shaken, which isn't a normal state for me. He rides down with me, and I go straight to my boss and tell her that for the first time in all these years, I'm not comfortable being in a guest room. I show her the pictures, and her face goes still and pale. She heads to the front desk and asks our general manager for a minute of her time, and brings her back into the office to show her what I'd just taken on my phone. The general manager agreed this wasn't a safe situation, and she took our maintenance man with her to go inform the man that he had 1 hour to get his belongings and vacate the hotel. He would not be welcomed back. I spent a few minutes in the laundry room trying to calm myself down. Then my boss went back up with me to the floor until the man was officially out of the hotel. I don't know who Bev is. I don't know who the woman is that he didn't feel that he needed to forgive. But any time that I enter room 422, the thought of that man fills my mind.